You've been working as a custodian for 16 years, Victoria said, her tone dismissive. No college degree, no formal business training. Why exactly do you think you're qualified to manage a $2 million operations budget? Diana's throat tightened. Because I've lived it. I know how to stretch every dollar. I know which vendors overcharge and which ones deliver quality. I know how to motivate a team that's underpaid and undervalued because I've been that team member for 16 years. Victoria's eyebrow arched slightly. And the gap in your resume from April to September last year? My daughter had emergency surgery, Diana said quietly. I took FMLA leave to care for her during recovery. I see. Victoria made another note. And child care arrangements going forward? This position requires flexibility. Early mornings. Late evenings. Weekend emergencies. Diana's hands clenched in her lap. I have arrangements. Which was barely true. Mrs. Washington downstairs helped when she could, but she was 73 and couldn't always be relied upon. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now, let's jump right back in. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying Diana with an expression that made her feel like a specimen under glass. Ms. Thompson, I'll be frank with you. This position requires someone who can interface with executives, vendors, and building management. Someone who can represent cross-enterprises professionally. Just a few minutes ago, Diana Thompson sat in the pristine waiting room of Cross Enterprises, her folded resume and references gripped in both hands like a lifeline. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see the financial district sprawling below, a forest of glass towers that seemed to mock her worn charcoal scrubs. The fabric was clean, but faded from years of industrial washings, the name tag on her chest reading, Diana, Custodial Services. The city looked different from the 42nd floor. Down there, she was invisible, just another body in medical scrubs catching the early bus. Up here, surrounded by marble and chrome, she felt exposed, out of place, wrong. Her daughter's voice echoed in her mind from that morning. You're going to do great, Mama. I know you will. At 9 years old, Maya believed in her mother with a faith that kept Diana awake at night. What Maya didn't know, couldn't know, was that this interview was their last hope before the medical bills swallowed them whole. Diana closed her eyes for a moment, and the morning came back to her in fragments. The alarm had gone off at 5:30 a.m., the same as always, but today she'd let herself linger an extra minute in bed. Maya had crawled in sometime during the night, her small body curled against Diana's side, one arm flung across her mother's chest. The surgical scar on Maya's abdomen was barely visible now, just a thin pink line that would fade with time. But the bills wouldn't fade. They kept growing, multiplying like weeds. Diana had slipped out of bed carefully, tucking the blanket around Maya's shoulders. Their apartment was small, just one bedroom that Diana had given to Maya while she slept on the pull-out couch. The morning light filtered through curtains that needed replacing, illuminating the cracks in the ceiling plaster that the landlord kept promising to fix. She'd made coffee in the ancient percolator, the sound familiar and comforting. While it brewed, she'd laid out her interview outfit on the kitchen counter. The charcoal scrubs, freshly washed and pressed as best she could manage with an iron that only worked on the highest setting. The borrowed blazer from Mrs. Washington downstairs, navy blue and slightly too large, but professional enough. The shoes she'd bought from the thrift store, black flats with only a small scuff on the toe that she'd covered with a Sharpie. Mama? Maya had appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She wore her favorite pajamas, the ones with the unicorns that were getting too small but that she refused to give up. Good morning, baby girl. Diana had poured herself coffee and started making Maya's breakfast. oatmeal with cinnamon and a drizzle of honey, the kind of breakfast that filled bellies and cost almost nothing. "Is today the big interview?" Maya had climbed onto one of the mismatched kitchen chairs, her legs swinging beneath the table. "It is." Diana had set the bowl in front of her daughter, along with a glass of water and her morning medication. The medication that cost $200 a month, even with the pharmacy discount card. "Are you nervous?" "A little bit," Diana admitted. She'd sat across from Maya, watching her daughter eat. "But I'm ready. I've been practicing." "Can you practice on me?" Maya had asked, spooning oatmeal into her mouth. "Pretend I'm the interview person." Diana had smiled despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. "Okay, ask me a question." Maya had sat up very straight, her expression serious. "Why do you want this job?" "Because I want to take care of you," Diana had said honestly. "I want to make sure you have everything you need. Medicine, a safe home, maybe even ballet classes like you've been asking about." "That's a good answer," Maya had said with the authority of a 9-year-old. "You're going to get it, Mama. I know you are." Diana had reached across the table and taken her daughter's hand. "You're my good luck charm. You know that?" After breakfast, Diana had helped Maya get dressed for school, braiding her hair into 2 neat plaits the way Maya liked. They'd walk together to the bus stop 3 blocks away, Maya chattering about a science project and a friend's birthday party she'd been invited to next month. Diana had made a mental note about the birthday party. She'd need to buy a gift, budget for it somehow. At the bus stop, Maya had hugged her tight. "You look really pretty, Mama, like a real business lady." Diana had blinked back tears. "Thank you, baby. I'll see you after school, okay? Mrs. Washington is going to pick you up and give you a snack." "I know." Maya had pulled back, her expression suddenly worried. "But you'll be home for dinner, right?" "I promise," Diana had said, kissing her forehead. "I'll be home." She'd watched the school bus pull away, Maya's face pressed against the window, waving. Then Diana had walked 4 blocks to the subway station, descended into the underground, and rode for 45 minutes to reach the financial district. The whole time, she'd reviewed her talking points, mouthed answers to anticipated questions, tried to ignore the looks from commuters in business suits who clearly wondered why a woman in custodial scrubs was riding the express train downtown. The hospital had sent another notice yesterday. $47,000 in outstanding charges from Maya's emergency surgery 6 months ago. Collections would start in 30 days. The apartment manager had already asked when she'd be caught up on rent. The weight of single parenthood pressed down on her shoulders like an invisible mountain. And today, that mountain felt ready to crush her completely. The past year had been a blur of double shifts, side hustles, and sleepless nights. After Maya's appendix had ruptured without warning, Diana had spent 3 days in the ICU praying her daughter would survive. She had survived, but the bills hadn't stopped coming. Her job as a night custodian paid $13.50 an hour, barely enough to cover rent and food, let alone medical debt that could buy a house. Every time she'd tried to move up, to apply for management positions or coordinator roles, she'd been dismissed. No degree, no corporate experience, too old at 34 to be considered promising. The interviewers saw the gaps where college should have been, the decades of cleaning other people's offices, and moved on to candidates with better pedigrees. But this felt different. Cross Enterprises needed a custodial operations manager, someone to oversee a team of 30 cleaners across 5 buildings. The job description had listed lived experience and practical knowledge ahead of formal education. It paid $68,000 a year, enough to clear the debt, enough to breathe. Diana had prepared for 3 weeks. She'd researched the company until her eyes burned, practiced answers while Maya slept, even borrowed a blazer from her neighbor to wear over her scrubs. This had to work. It simply had to. Diana Thompson. The memory shattered. Diana looked up to see a sharp-looking Asian woman in her 50s, tablet in hand and ice in her expression. "I'm Victoria Chen, Director of Human Resources. Follow me." Diana stood, smoothing her scrubs self-consciously. She followed Victoria down a corridor lined with photos of corporate galas, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, and executives shaking hands with politicians. The carpet was so thick her shoes made no sound. Every door they passed was closed, the frosted glass revealing only shadows of people who belonged here. She did not belong here. The conference room was all glass and steel, a long table that could seat 20. Victoria gestured to a chair at the far end, positioning Diana with her back to the windows. Victoria sat at the head of the table, opening her tablet with a precise tap. "Let's begin," Victoria said without preamble. "Walk me through your management experience." Diana took a breath and launched into her prepared answer. She spoke about leading her night crew of 6, about implementing new efficiency protocols that saved the building manager 15% on supply costs, about training new hires and resolving conflicts between team members. Victoria listened with an expression that gave nothing away. Her stylus moved across the tablet, taking notes that Diana couldn't see. Then came the question Diana had learned to dread. "I see you've been working as a custodian for 16 years, Victoria said, her tone just shy of dismissive. "No college degree, no formal business training. Why exactly do you think you're qualified to manage a $2 million operations budget?" Diana's throat tightened. "Because I've lived it. I know how to stretch every dollar. I know which vendors overcharge and which ones deliver quality. I know how to motivate a team that's underpaid and undervalued because I've been that team member for 16 years. Victoria's eyebrow arched slightly. "And the gap in your resume from April to September last year?" "My daughter had emergency surgery," Diana said quietly. "I took FMLA leave to care for her during recovery." "I see." Victoria made another note. "And childcare arrangements going forward? This position requires flexibility, early mornings, late evenings, weekend emergencies." Diana's hands clenched in her lap. "I have arrangements." Which was barely true. Mrs. Washington downstairs helped when she could, but she was 73 and couldn't always be relied upon. Victoria leaned back in her chair, studying Diana with an expression that made her feel like a specimen under glass. "Ms. Thompson, I'll be frank with you. This position requires someone who can interface with executives, vendors, and building management. Someone who can represent cross-enterprises professionally." She paused, her meaning clear in the silence. "Someone who doesn't look like you. Someone who doesn't smell like industrial cleaner and desperation." Diana felt something crack inside her chest. Not anger exactly, just a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. She'd spent 16 years scrubbing other people's toilets, emptying their trash, making their world clean and comfortable while remaining invisible. She'd raised a daughter alone, survived medical bankruptcy, worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over their heads, and she was still not enough. Diana stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the polished floor. "Thank you for your time," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I can see this isn't going to work." Victoria blinked, clearly not expecting this. "Ms. Thompson, we haven't concluded the interview." "I know my worth," Diana interrupted quietly. "And it's not here." She gathered her folded documents, tucked them under her arm, and walked toward the door. Her reflection in the glass walls showed a woman in faded scrubs walking away from opportunity, but for the first time in months, her spine was straight, She would find another way. She always did. For Maya. Always for Maya. Diana walked through the corridor, past the photos of people who mattered, past the frosted glass doors hiding people who belonged. She pressed the elevator button and waited, her heart pounding, but her jaw set. The doors opened. She stepped inside. Sebastian Cross had been standing behind the one-way mirror for 20 minutes, a cold cup of coffee forgotten in his hand. He hadn't planned to observe this interview. He had a call with Tokyo in 15 minutes and a presentation to review before the board meeting at noon. But something about the candidate's file had caught his attention that morning when Victoria had left it on his desk for approval. Diana Thompson, 34 years old, 16 years in custodial services, no college degree, single mother. It was the address that had stopped him. 1247 Westbrook Apartments, Unit 3B. Sebastian had stared at that address for a full minute, his coffee growing cold. Then he'd pulled up the property records on his computer. The building was in the South Side, a neighborhood he knew well. Too well. A neighborhood where his family had once lived in a different lifetime, before Cross Enterprises became the empire it was today. He'd made a call to HR, asked for the candidate's emergency contact information. And when he saw the name listed under, in case of emergency, Maria Santos, grandmother, deceased, something in his chest had seized. Maria Santos. He'd told his assistant to cancel his morning, told Victoria he wanted to observe the interview through the mirror. She'd looked surprised, but hadn't questioned him. Nobody questioned Sebastian Cross. Now he stood in the darkened observation room, watching Diana Thompson sit with her spine rigid in the conference room chair, her hands gripping her folded documents like they were the only solid things in the world. She looked like her grandmother, not in features exactly, but in the way she carried herself. That particular combination of dignity and exhaustion that came from working twice as hard for half the recognition. Maria Santos had been his family's neighbor 37 years ago, back when the Cross family lived in a 2-bedroom rental and Sebastian's father was trying to start a construction business with nothing but ambition and a pickup truck that broke down twice a week. Sebastian had been 7 years old when his father's only client had declared bankruptcy, leaving Joseph Cross with $30,000 in unpaid invoices and no way to make payroll for his 3 employees. The bank had refused a loan. Every investor had turned them down. The truck was about to be repossessed. And then Maria Santos, a custodian who cleaned the office building where Sebastian's mother worked as a secretary, had knocked on their door one evening with an envelope. "I heard about Joe's trouble," she'd said to Sebastian's mother, pressing the envelope into her hands. "This is everything I've saved. It's not much, but it's a start. $12,000, her entire life savings, money she'd earned cleaning other people's offices, dollar by dollar, shift by shift. Sebastian's father had tried to refuse, had insisted it was too much, that he couldn't possibly accept, but Maria had been firm. "You'll pay me back when you can," she'd said. "And if you can't, well, that's what neighbors are for." His father had paid her back within 2 years, once the business stabilized, with interest, but Maria had refused the interest. "Just help someone else when they need it," she'd said. "That's all I ask." Joseph Cross had built his empire on that foundation. That $12,000 loan had saved the business, which had grown into Cross Construction, then Cross Development, then Cross Enterprises. 52 buildings across 3 cities. $2 billion in annual revenue, all of it traceable back to a custodian who'd believed in a struggling contractor with 3 kids and a dream. Sebastian had never forgotten. When Maria Santos had died 8 years ago, he'd paid for her funeral, though he'd done it anonymously, through a third party. He'd tried to find her family, to offer help, but the lawyer had reported back that she had no living relatives. Her daughter had died years earlier, and there were no grandchildren listed in any records. Except there were. Diana Thompson sat in that conference room with Maria Santos's eyes, Maria Santos's posture, Maria Santos's quiet strength. Sebastian watched as Victoria asked about the gap in Diana's employment, watched Diana's face as she explained about her daughter's surgery, watched the way Victoria's expression remained cold, clinical, dismissive. And childcare arrangements going forward? Victoria's voice came through the speaker in the observation room. This position requires flexibility, early mornings, late evenings, weekend emergencies. Diana's hands clenched. I have arrangements. Sebastian could hear the lie in her voice, the same lie his mother had told when she was working 2 jobs to help keep the business afloat, the lie every single parent told when they were barely holding everything together. Victoria leaned back, and Sebastian knew what was coming. He'd seen that expression before. That particular look that said, "You don't belong here," without saying the words. Ms. Thompson, I'll be frank with you. This position requires someone who can interface with executives, vendors, and building management. Someone who can represent cross-enterprises professionally. The pause that followed was filled with unspoken prejudice. Sebastian's jaw tightened. He reached for the phone to call into the conference room to stop this, but Diana moved first. She stood abruptly. "Thank you for your time," Diana said, her voice steady. "I can see this isn't going to work." "Ms. Thompson, we haven't concluded. Gee, I know my worth," Diana interrupted, "and it's not here." Sebastian's coffee cup slipped from his hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Cold liquid spread across the carpet, but he didn't notice. She was leaving. Diana gathered her documents and walked toward the door. Through the one-way mirror, Sebastian could see her reflection in the glass walls. The same straight spine, the same dignity in the face of dismissal, the same refusal to beg that her grandmother had carried. Maria Santos had given his family everything when they had nothing, and now her granddaughter was walking away from the company that her generosity had helped build, dismissed by an executive too blind to see what she was losing. Sebastian was already moving. He shoved open the door of the observation room and strode into the hallway. Victoria was exiting the conference room, her tablet under her arm, her expression satisfied. "Mr. Cross, I didn't realize you were observing. The candidate wasn't suitable for the—" "Where did she go?" Sebastian interrupted. "She walked out, quite unprofessionally, I might add. Sebastian didn't wait to hear the rest. He ran down the corridor toward the elevators. The digital display showed one descending, already at floor 38, 36, 34. He couldn't let her leave. Couldn't let her walk out of this building believing she wasn't good enough. Couldn't let Maria Santos's granddaughter disappear into the city carrying the same burden of invisibility that her grandmother had carried. He owed Maria everything. Which meant he owed Diana everything. Sebastian punched the down button repeatedly, but the other elevator was on floor 12. He turned and ran for the stairwell, shoving open the heavy door and taking the stairs 2 at a time. His dress shoes pounded against concrete. His 3-piece suit jacket flew behind him. 42 floors. He had 42 floors to reach the lobby before Diana Thompson walked out of his building and out of his reach. And he was running out of time. Diana's hands shook as she pressed the lobby button inside the elevator. The doors slid shut, sealing her inside the small chrome box. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished walls, multiplied by mirrors on 3 sides. A woman in faded scrubs, a woman with documents she'd prepared for 3 weeks clutched uselessly under her arm, a woman who'd just walked away from $68,000 and her daughter's future. The elevator descended smoothly, the numbers ticking down with mechanical indifference. 41, 40, 39. Diana closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the cool metal wall. Someone who can represent Cross Enterprises professionally. Victoria's words echoed in her skull. The meaning beneath them had been crystal clear. You're not polished enough, not educated enough, not white enough, not worthy enough to be seen. Diana had faced that wall before, had run into it at every application, every interview, every attempt to climb out of the life circumstance had built for her. But today, something had snapped. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the medical bills sitting on her kitchen counter. Maybe it was the memory of Maya's face this morning, so full of faith that her mother could do anything. Or maybe it was just that she was tired of shrinking herself to fit into spaces that were never designed for her in the first place. 30, 29, 28. The elevator continued its descent, and with each floor, Diana felt the weight settling back onto her shoulders. Reality was waiting for her in the lobby. Reality in the form of bills she couldn't pay, a rent she was behind on, a daughter who believed her mother was going to save them. What would she tell Maya tonight? Diana's throat tightened. She pressed her palm against her eyes, refusing to let tears fall. Not here. Not in this building. Not where the security cameras could capture her breaking. 20, 19, 18. She'd have to pick up extra shifts. Maybe she could ask her supervisor at the hospital if there were any overnight openings. She could clean offices from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., sleep for 3 hours, then work a day shift somewhere else. It wouldn't be the first time she'd worked 2 jobs. Wouldn't be the first time she'd sacrificed sleep for survival. The elevator chimed. Floor 15. The doors opened. A man in an expensive suit stepped in, barely glancing at her before turning to face the doors. Diana shifted to the side, making herself smaller, invisible. The man pulled out his phone and began typing, his thumb moving rapidly across the screen. Diana watched him from the corner of her eye. His suit probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. His watch, a sleek silver thing with a leather band, could have paid Maya's medical bills in full. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. He belonged in this building, in this elevator, in this world. She didn't. The elevator stopped again. Floor 8. The man exited without a word, and Diana was alone again. 5, 4, 3. She straightened her spine and adjusted the documents under her arm. When she walked out of this building, she would walk with her head up. She would not give Victoria Chen or Cross Enterprises or any of them the satisfaction of seeing her broken. 2, 1, lobby. The doors opened onto a vast marble expanse. The lobby of Cross Enterprises was designed to intimidate. 20-foot ceilings, a reception desk made of glass and steel, abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than Diana made in a decade. People in business attire moved through the space with purpose, their heels clicking against polished stone. Diana stepped out of the elevator and into the crowd. Nobody looked at her. Nobody saw her. In her faded scrubs, she was part of the invisible workforce that kept buildings like this running. The cleaners, the maintenance workers, the people who emptied trash and scrubbed toilets and made sure the important people never had to think about the mechanics of cleanliness. She'd been doing this work since she was 18. 16 years of invisible labor. 16 years of being overlooked. And for one brief foolish moment this morning, she'd let herself believe it could be different. Diana walked toward the glass revolving doors at the front of the building. Through them she could see the plaza, the street beyond, the bus stop where she'd catch the number 42 back to her neighborhood, back to reality. She pushed through the revolving door, and the afternoon air hit her like a slap. Cold, sharp. The December sun was already low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the plaza. People rushed past her, heading home from work, faces buried in phones, earbuds blocking out the world. Diana stopped just outside the doors and took a breath. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a text from Mrs. Washington. Maya is home safe. She made cookies. Wants to know how the interview went. Diana stared at the message. Her vision blurred. How did you tell your 9-year-old daughter that her mother had failed? That the last chance was gone? That the medical bills would keep piling up until they lost everything? Another buzz. Another text. She says to tell you she's proud of you no matter what. She's a good girl, Diana. You raised her right. Diana pressed her hand to her mouth, holding back a sob. Maya was proud of her. Maya, who deserved ballet classes and birthday parties and a mother who didn't have to work 3 jobs. Maya, who'd survived emergency surgery and medical trauma and still believed in happy endings. Diana couldn't fall apart. Not here. Not now. She straightened her shoulders, tucked her phone back into her pocket, and started walking across the plaza. Her shoes clicked against the pavement. The documents under her arm felt heavier with each step. Behind her, the Cross Enterprises building rose into the sky, all glass and steel and wealth, reflecting the clouds and dismissing her existence in the same breath. She'd walked maybe 20 feet when she heard it. A voice, distant, desperate. Wait! Please wait! Diana didn't turn. People were always shouting in the city, always running, always urgent about things that didn't concern her. She kept walking. Diana Thompson, please. This time she stopped, because whoever was shouting knew her name. Diana turned slowly, her heart hammering. Running toward her across the plaza, his charcoal 3-piece suit jacket flying open, his tie loosened, his expensive dress shoes slapping against pavement, was a man she'd only seen in photographs, Sebastian Cross, the CEO of Cross Enterprises, the billionaire. The man whose face graced the covers of business magazines and the walls of the lobby she'd just exited. He was running, actually sprinting, across the crowded plaza, dodging pedestrians and briefcases and the stream of people heading home. Behind him, a security guard stood frozen in the lobby doorway, speaking urgently into a radio. Diana's first instinct was to run. Whatever this was, it couldn't be good. CEOs didn't chase cleaning ladies through plazas. They didn't know their names. They certainly didn't sprint in $1,000 shoes. But her feet wouldn't move. She stood rooted to the pavement, clutching her documents, while Sebastian Cross closed the distance between them. He reached her within seconds, slightly out of breath, his perfectly styled dark hair now disheveled from the wind. Up close. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 40. His eyes were intense, searching her face like he was looking for something specific. Diana Thompson, he said again, catching his breath. Please, don't leave. Diana's mouth opened, but no words came out. Around them, people were starting to stare. A few had pulled out phones. She could already see the headlines. Billionaire CEO chases woman through business district. I don't understand, Diana managed finally. What do you want? Your grandmother, Sebastian said. Maria Santos. She was your grandmother, wasn't she? The world tilted. Diana hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in years. Not since the funeral. Not since she'd stood in a nearly empty church and watched them lower the woman who'd raised her into the ground. How do you know that name? Diana whispered. Sebastian's expression softened. Because 37 years ago your grandmother saved my family, and I've been looking for a way to repay that debt for most of my life. The plaza, the people, the cold December air, everything faded except for Sebastian Cross's face and the impossible words coming out of his mouth. I don't, Diana started, then stopped. Her thoughts were scattered, refusing to form coherent sentences. My grandmother was a custodian. She cleaned buildings, She didn't know people like you. She knew people like me before we became people like me, Sebastian said gently. When my father was starting his construction business, when we had nothing, your grandmother loaned us $12,000, her entire life savings. That loan saved us, saved the business. Everything I have, everything Cross Enterprises is, it started with your grandmother's generosity. Diana shook her head. It didn't make sense. Grandma Maria had died with almost nothing. A small apartment full of old furniture, a bank account with barely enough to cover the funeral expenses. If she'd had that kind of money, if she'd been owed that kind of debt, why had she died poor? She never told me, Diana said. Her voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. She wouldn't have, Sebastian replied. From what I knew of her, she never expected anything in return. My father paid her back with interest, but she refused the interest. Said he should just help someone else when they needed it. A laugh escaped Diana's throat, bitter and broken. That sounds like her, always helping everyone else. Working herself to death to make sure other people were okay. Her eyes stung. Grandma Maria had raised her after Diana's mother died, had worked double shifts to keep Diana fed and clothed and in school, had never complained, never asked for recognition, never demanded the gratitude she deserved. And she died exhausted, worn down, invisible to the world she'd spent her life serving. She deserved better, Diana said quietly. She did, Sebastian agreed. And so do you. Diana looked up at him. He was still slightly out of breath from his sprint, his usually perfect appearance disheveled. Behind him, more people had stopped to watch. Phone cameras were definitely pointed at them now. Is that why you chased me? Diana asked. Because you feel guilty? I chased you because Victoria Chen was wrong, Sebastian said firmly. Because I watched that interview, and I saw someone with 16 years of practical experience being dismissed by someone who values credentials over capability. Because I saw my HR director treat you like you weren't good enough to clean our floors, when the truth is, you're more qualified than half the managers we have. He took a step closer. But yes, he continued, his voice dropping. Also because I owe your grandmother a debt I can never fully repay. Because she saw potential in my family when no one else did. Because she believed in us when we had nothing. And because letting her granddaughter walk away believing she's not good enough would be the worst kind of betrayal of everything she taught me. Diana's hands trembled around her documents. I walked out of that interview. I told Victoria Chen I knew my worth and that it wasn't there. You were right, Sebastian said. Your worth isn't in that interview room. It's not in whatever number Victoria Chen wrote on her tablet. Your worth is in 16 years of showing up, in raising a daughter alone, in having the courage to walk away when someone treats you with less respect than you deserve. He held out his hand. Come back inside with me, not as a candidate, as someone I need to have a conversation with, about your grandmother, about that interview, about what Cross Enterprises really stands for. Diana looked at his outstretched hand, at the man who'd sprinted through his own lobby to catch her, at the crowd of people watching this impossible scene unfold. She thought about Maya, waiting at home with cookies and pride in her mother, no matter what. She thought about Grandma Maria, who'd given everything to help others and never asked for recognition. She thought about the 16 years she'd spent invisible, and the moment in that conference room when she'd finally demanded to be seen. Diana straightened her spine one more time. Then she took Sebastian Cross's hand. Okay, she said. Let's talk. They walked back through the lobby in silence. Diana felt every eye in the room tracking their movement. The receptionist's jaw had dropped. The security guard spoke urgently into his radio. A group of executives clustered near the elevator bank whispered behind their hands. Sebastian Cross walked beside her, his hand resting lightly on her elbow, guiding her, but not forcing. His presence created a bubble around them. People stepped back. Conversations stopped. The normal rhythm of the lobby ground to a halt. Diana's heart hammered. This was surreal. This was impossible. CEOs didn't chase employees through plazas. They didn't run down stairs and arrive breathless and disheveled. They didn't look at custodians like they mattered. But Sebastian Cross had done all of those things. "This way," Sebastian said quietly, steering her past the elevators toward a private corridor she hadn't noticed before. A security guard stood at attention, nodded at Sebastian, and pressed a button that opened an unmarked door. The elevator beyond was different from the ones Diana had taken. No chrome, no mirrors, just dark wood paneling and soft lighting. Sebastian pressed the button for the top floor. "Where are we going?" Diana asked. Her voice sounded small in the enclosed space. "Somewhere we can talk privately," Sebastian said. "My office, if that's all right with you." Diana nodded. What else could she do? She'd agreed to come back. And despite everything, despite the impossibility of this situation, she was curious. No, more than curious. Desperate to understand how this billionaire CEO had known her grandmother. How Grandma Maria, who died with almost nothing, had somehow been connected to one of the wealthiest families in the city. The elevator rose smoothly. Diana watched the numbers climb. 43, 44, 45. The doors opened onto a floor that looked nothing like the sterile conference room where she'd been interviewed. This was all warm wood and leather furniture and windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a view of the entire city spread out like a map. "This way," Sebastian said again. His office was at the end of the hall. The door was already open. Inside, the space was surprisingly modest for a billionaire. A large desk, yes, but covered in papers and files rather than pristine and empty. Bookshelves lined one wall, crammed with volumes that looked actually read rather than decorative. Photos hung on the other wall. Family photos. Diana stopped walking, because in one of those photos, front and center, was her grandmother, younger than Diana had ever seen her, maybe in her 30s, standing in what looked like a modest kitchen, smiling at the camera. Beside her stood a man in work clothes, his arm around a woman holding a baby. Behind them, a young boy, maybe 7 or 8, grinned at the camera. "That's my father," Sebastian said softly, coming to stand beside Diana. He pointed to the man. "Joseph Cross. That's my mother, Helen. The baby is my sister, Caroline. And that's me." He pointed to the boy. Then his finger moved to the woman at the center of the photo. "And that's your grandmother, Maria Santos. She lived 3 doors down from us in the Westbrook apartments. Same building you live in now, actually, though a different unit." Diana's throat closed. She couldn't speak, couldn't process. Her grandmother, young and smiling, standing in someone else's kitchen like she belonged there. "Your grandmother and my mother worked in the same office building downtown," Sebastian continued. "Maria was a custodian. My mother was a secretary. They'd take the same bus to work, became friends. When my father's business was failing, when we were about to lose everything, my mother told Maria. And Maria showed up at our door the next day with an envelope." Sebastian moved to his desk and pulled open a drawer. He removed something carefully, reverently. An old, yellowed envelope. He handed it to Diana. The envelope was worn, the edges soft from age. Written in careful script on the front. "For Joseph and Helen Cross, with faith." "Open it," Sebastian said. Diana's hands shook as she did. Inside was a deposit slip. First National Bank. Date, March 15th, 1987. Amount, $12,000. And a note, written in handwriting Diana recognized from old birthday cards and grocery lists. This is everything I've saved. It's not much, but it's a start. Pay me back when you can. If you can't, just help someone else someday. That's all I ask. Maria. Tears blurred Diana's vision. $12,000. Her grandmother's entire life savings, given to neighbors who needed it. My father paid her back within 2 years, Sebastian said. With interest. She refused the interest, said it wasn't about profit. It was about people helping people. Diana sank into the chair behind her. The envelope felt heavy in her hands. Impossibly heavy. She never told me, Diana whispered. She never said anything about this, about knowing your family, about the money. She wouldn't have, Sebastian said. That was who she was. She helped people and then forgot about it. Moved on to the next person who needed help. She probably did it dozens of times, hundreds maybe. Small acts of generosity that changed lives. He pulled another photo from his desk drawer. This one more recent. A funeral. When she died 8 years ago, Sebastian said, I paid for everything. The funeral, the burial. But I did it anonymously. I didn't want her to feel like she owed me, and I tried to find family. My lawyer said there was none. No children, no grandchildren listed in any records. My mother died when I was 3, Diana said. Her voice sounded distant. Grandma Maria raised me, but I was never legally adopted. I kept my father's last name, Thompson. He'd left before I was born, so I guess legally, on paper, I didn't exist as her family. Sebastian's expression softened. I'm sorry. I should have looked harder. Why? Diana looked up at him. You didn't owe us anything. You paid your debt to her. You paid for her funeral. Most people wouldn't have done even that. Most people didn't owe her what I owed her, Sebastian said. He sat down in the chair across from Diana, leaning forward, his hands clasped. Diana, everything I have exists because of your grandmother's faith. This building, this company, my ability to employ 3,000 people and support their families. It all started with $12,000 from a custodian who believed in a contractor with more ambition than capital. He gestured around the office. I've spent 30 years trying to honor that, building something worthy of her faith. But today, I watched our HR director treat you exactly the way the world treated your grandmother. Like you were invisible. Like your work didn't matter. Like you had nothing to offer except manual labor. His voice grew firm. And I realized I'd failed, because if Cross Enterprises can't see value in someone like you, someone with your grandmother's strength and dignity, then we've become exactly the kind of company that would have turned my father away 40 years ago. Diana's chest felt tight. You don't know anything about me. You watched one interview. I know you raised a daughter alone, Sebastian said. I know you worked 16 years in the same field, showing up every day, doing work most people won't even acknowledge. I know you walked away from a job you desperately needed because someone treated you with disrespect. That takes courage. That takes exactly the kind of character this company needs. He stood and extended his hand again. So let me ask you something, Diana Thompson. If I offered you a position here, not in custodial management, but as Director of Operations and Human Development, reporting directly to me, would you take it? Diana's mouth fell open. I don't have the qualifications for— You have exactly the qualifications needed, Sebastian interrupted. You have lived experience. You have practical knowledge. You have your grandmother's heart. The rest, credentials and credentials, those are things we can provide. What I can't teach someone is how to see people the way you and Maria saw people. Diana looked at the envelope in her hands, at the deposit slip, at her grandmother's handwriting. Just help someone else someday. That's all I ask. What about Victoria Chen? Diana asked. Victoria Chen no longer works here as of 3 minutes ago, Sebastian said flatly. I called her termination through to security while we were in the elevator. Diana's eyes widened. I don't tolerate people who can't see value in others, Sebastian continued. I don't care how impressive their credentials are. This company was built on the belief that everyone deserves a chance. Everyone deserves to be seen. Victoria forgot that. You remembered it. He held out his hand again. So, what do you say? Diana stared at Sebastian's outstretched hand for a long moment. Director of Operations and Human Development. A position that probably paid 6 figures. A position reporting directly to the CEO. A position that would change everything for her and Maya. But was it real? Or was this elaborate guilt? A billionaire's attempt to absolve himself of a debt he'd owed a dead woman? Tell me more, Diana said finally. About my grandmother and your family. I need to understand what I'm walking into. Sebastian lowered his hand and nodded. He walked to the window, looking out over the city. I was 7 years old when everything almost fell apart, he began. My father had started cross-construction 2 years earlier. It was just him and 3 employees running jobs around the city. Small stuff, kitchen renovations, bathroom remodels, fixing porches. The work that keeps contractors alive but never makes them rich. He turned back to face Diana. But my father was good at it. Word spread. He got bigger jobs, an office renovation, a small commercial build, and then he got the contract that should have changed everything. A real estate developer needed a crew to gut and renovate a 4-story apartment building in Brooklyn. $200,000 contract, triple what he'd ever handled before. Sebastian's expression darkened. He hired more people, bought new equipment, put everything he had into that job. And then 6 months in, the developer declared bankruptcy. The project stopped. The developer disappeared, and my father was left holding $200,000 in unpaid invoices for work he'd already completed. Diana winced. She'd seen it before. Small contractors destroyed by larger companies that could afford to walk away from debts. The workers wanted their pay, Sebastian continued. The suppliers wanted their money. The bank wanted their loan payments. And we had nothing. My father had leveraged everything on that contract. The house, the truck, his reputation. He moved back to his desk, picked up another photo. This one showed the family in a small apartment. Cramped, modest, nothing like the luxury Diana associated with the Cross name. We had to move, Sebastian said. Sold the house to pay some of the debts. Moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Westbrook. My parents slept in 1 bedroom. My sister and I shared the other. My father was trying to rebuild, taking whatever work he could get. But nobody wanted to hire a contractor who'd defaulted on a major project. He set the photo down. That's when Maria entered our lives. She lived 3 doors down from us. She and my mother took the same bus to work every morning. My mother worked as a secretary at a law firm. Maria cleaned the same building at night. They'd talk during the commute. Became friends. Sebastian's voice softened. Maria started watching me and Caroline after school. My parents both worked long hours, trying to dig out of debt. Maria would pick us up from school, bring us to her apartment, feed us dinner. She never asked for payment. Said neighbors helped neighbors. That's what community meant. Diana's throat tightened. That sounded exactly like her grandmother. Always helping, always giving, never keeping score. One night, my mother broke down, Sebastian said. Told Maria everything. How bad it was. How close we were to losing everything. How my father was talking about declaring bankruptcy and moving to another city to start over. My mother cried. I remember because I'd never seen her cry before. He paused. The next morning, Maria knocked on our door. My father answered. She handed him an envelope and walked away before he could open it. Just said, "Faith moves mountains, Joseph. This is faith." Sebastian picked up the yellowed envelope from his desk again. $12,000. For a custodian in 1987, that represented years of savings. Decades, maybe. She lived in a one-bedroom apartment. She took the bus because she couldn't afford a car. She wore clothes until they fell apart. And she gave my father everything she had. "Why?" Diana whispered. "She barely knew you." "I've asked myself that question for 30 years, Sebastian said. "The only answer I have is that Maria Santos saw people. Really saw them. Not their bank accounts or their credentials or their social status. She saw their hearts. She saw my father's desperation and my mother's fear and 2 kids who needed stability. And she decided we were worth investing in." He set the envelope down carefully. My father paid her back within 18 months. He took her $12,000 and turned it into work. He was careful this time. Smaller contracts, reliable clients. Built his reputation back slowly. Within 2 years, he had a crew of 15 and steady work. Within 5 years, he'd expanded into property development. Within 10, cross-construction was worth millions. "And my grandmother?" Diana asked. "She watched it happen," Sebastian said. "She'd come over for dinner sometimes. Always brought something. A pie, a casserole, never empty-handed. She'd ask about the business, about me and Caroline. She'd tell my father she was proud of him, and she'd refuse every time he tried to give her more than the original loan plus the interest she'd agreed to accept." Sebastian sat down across from Diana again. "When I was 16, my parents died in a car accident," he said quietly. "Caroline was 13. We had no other family. The court was trying to figure out custody, and Maria showed up at the hearing. Told the judge she'd take care of us if needed. An elderly custodian offering to raise 2 teenagers. Diana's eyes widened. "The court eventually placed us with a distant cousin in Connecticut," Sebastian continued. "Someone with the financial means the law required. But Maria fought for us, and before we left, she told me something I've never forgotten." He leaned forward. She said, "Sebastian, you're going to be wealthy someday. Your father built something real, and it's going to grow. But money doesn't make you rich. What makes you rich is how you treat people when you have power. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget who helped you climb. And when you get to the top, reach down and pull someone else up." A tear rolled down Diana's cheek. "She never told me any of this," she said. "Never mentioned your family. I knew she'd been a custodian. I knew she'd worked hard. But I didn't know she'd changed people's lives." "She changed mine," Sebastian said simply. "Everything I am, everything this company is, it exists because a custodian believed in a failed contractor, because she gave everything she had to help someone she barely knew." He stood again, pacing to the window. "When she died, I couldn't save her," he said. His voice was rough. "I'd become exactly what she predicted. Wealthy, powerful. But I couldn't save her from dying alone, still working at 76 years old because her pension wasn't enough." He turned back to Diana. "But I can do something for her granddaughter. I can offer you what she never had. Opportunity, recognition, the chance to use everything you've learned from 16 years of invisible work to change how this company treats people. To make sure no one else gets dismissed the way Victoria Chen dismissed you today." Diana looked at the envelope, at her grandmother's handwriting, at the photos of a family Maria had saved. "This isn't charity," Sebastian said. This is business. I need someone who understands the workers no one else sees, who knows what it's like to struggle, who has your grandmother's heart and your own strength. That person is you." He extended his hand one final time. "So I'll ask again. Will you help me build the company your grandmother's faith created?" Diana thought about Maya waiting at home, about the medical bills, about 16 years of being invisible, and she thought about her grandmother's words, written on an old envelope. Just help someone else someday. Diana stood. Her legs felt shaky, but her spine was straight. She took Sebastian Cross's hand. "Yes," she said. "I will." Sebastian's handshake was firm, but Diana noticed his hand was shaking slightly too. This wasn't easy for him either. This wasn't a simple business transaction. This was personal. This was about a debt 37 years old and a woman who'd changed the trajectory of his entire life. "There's something we need to do first," Sebastian said, releasing her hand. "Before you officially accept this position, before we sign any paperwork, I need you to see something." Diana nodded, still not entirely trusting her voice. Sebastian walked to his desk and pressed a button on his phone. "Maria, please ask Richard Chen to come to my office, and have security escort Victoria Chen to the 45th floor conference room. Tell her it's urgent." "I'll meet her there in 5 minutes." He hung up and looked at Diana. "Richard Chen is my COO. No relation to Victoria despite the shared surname. He's been with me for 15 years. He'll need to meet you." "Right now?" Diana's stomach clenched. She was still wearing her worn scrubs. Her borrowed blazer was wrinkled from being clutched under her arm. She hadn't prepared for this. Hadn't prepared to meet executives and sit in rooms where decisions were made. "Right now," Sebastian confirmed, "because I want you to see how Cross Enterprises should operate, how we're supposed to treat people. And I want you to witness what happens when someone forgets that." They walked back down the corridor to the elevator. This time, when they descended to the 45th floor, Diana's heart hammered for different reasons. Not fear of failure. Something else. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. The conference room was the same one where Victoria had interviewed her less than 2 hours ago. The long glass table. The windows overlooking the city. The cold, sterile perfection of corporate power. Victoria Chen stood at the far end of the table, her tablet under her arm, her expression annoyed but confident. She clearly thought this was another meeting, another chance to demonstrate her efficiency. She glanced at Diana with barely concealed disdain before turning her attention to Sebastian. "Mr. Cross, I'm glad you called me. I wanted to discuss the custodial management position. The candidate this morning was clearly unsuitable, but I have 3 other applicants with much stronger credentials that I'd like to present to you for review." "That won't be necessary," Sebastian said. The door opened again. A man in his early 50s entered, Asian, wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit. His expression was serious but kind. "Richard Chen." He nodded to Sebastian, glanced at Diana with curiosity, then took a seat at the table. Sebastian remained standing. "Victoria, I asked you here because I need to address something that happened this morning. Something that represents a fundamental failure of the values this company was built on." Victoria's confident expression faltered slightly. "I'm not sure what you mean." "The interview you conducted with Ms. Thompson," Sebastian said. His voice was calm, but carried an edge Diana hadn't heard before. The voice of a CEO who'd made billion-dollar decisions and wasn't accustomed to being questioned. I observed it through the one-way mirror. Victoria's face paled. "You were watching?" "I was," Sebastian confirmed. "And what I witnessed was a textbook example of everything Cross Enterprises stands against. You dismissed a candidate with 16 years of practical experience because she lacked formal credentials. You questioned her ability to represent this company professionally based on nothing but prejudice. You made her feel less than, invisible, unworthy. Mr. Cross, I was simply maintaining our standards, Victoria said, her voice rising slightly. This is a management position requiring interface with executives and vendors. We have an image to uphold. And what image is that? Sebastian asked quietly. The image of a company that values appearance over substance? That judges people by their clothes rather than their character? That forgets where it came from? He moved to stand beside Diana. Victoria, do you know how this company started? Victoria blinked. Your father founded Cross Construction in 1985. He built it into Cross Enterprises through strategic development and acquisitions. Do you know how he financed that first construction business? Sebastian pressed. Where the seed money came from? Victoria hesitated. I assume a bank loan or investors. Wrong, Sebastian said. The seed money came from a custodian, a woman who cleaned office buildings for $13 an hour and gave my father her entire life savings because she believed in him, because she saw potential where banks and investors saw risk. He gestured to Diana. That custodian was Ms. Thompson's grandmother, Maria Santos. Everything this company is, every building we own, every employee we support, exists because a cleaning lady had the vision to invest in a failed contractor. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. You dismissed Maria Santos's granddaughter this morning, Sebastian continued. You looked at her scrubs and her lack of degree and decided she wasn't good enough. You forgot that this company was built by people exactly like her, for people exactly like her. Richard Chen leaned forward, his expression grave. Victoria, is this true? Did you dismiss a candidate based on appearance? I was evaluating qualifications, Victoria said, but her voice had lost its confidence. The position requires specific skills. The position requires vision, Sebastian corrected. The ability to see potential in people, to understand that lived experience is worth more than credentials, to remember that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Those are skills you clearly lack. He turned to Richard. Victoria Chen's employment with Cross Enterprises is terminated effective immediately. Have HR prepare her severance package according to her contract. Security will escort her from the building. Victoria's face went from pale to red. You're firing me? Over one interview? I'm firing you because you represent everything my father fought against, Sebastian said. Because you forgot that every person in this building, from the CEO to the custodial staff, deserves respect. Because you made someone feel worthless when she's worth more than you could possibly understand. Victoria looked at Diana, then back at Sebastian. For a moment, something like understanding crossed her face. Then it hardened into anger. This is about guilt, she said. You're sacrificing a competent executive to assuage your guilt over some cleaning lady from 40 years ago. No, Sebastian said. This is about values. The values Maria Santos taught my family. The values that built this company. And the values you just proved you don't share. He nodded to the security guard who'd appeared at the door. Victoria gathered her tablet, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. She walked past Diana without looking at her, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. Silence filled the conference room. Richard Chen let out a long breath. Well, that was overdue. Sebastian turned to him. Richard, I'd like you to meet Diana Thompson. As of today, she's our new Director of Operations and Human Development, reporting directly to me. Richard stood and extended his hand to Diana. Ms. Thompson, it's a pleasure. And may I say, I'm glad someone finally called Victoria out on her attitude. She's been a problem for months, but she produced results, so I let it slide. That was my failure. Diana shook his hand, still processing what had just happened. I'm not sure I understand my role yet. You will, Sebastian said. Richard will help you get oriented. But essentially, you're going to help us rebuild how we approach hiring, retention, and employee development. You're going to make sure we never dismiss someone's potential because of where they came from. You're going to be the person your grandmother was for my family. He smiled. You're going to give people chances they don't think they deserve, and you're going to prove that lived experience is the most valuable credential of all. Diana looked at the conference table where she'd sat 2 hours ago, feeling small and inadequate. The same room, the same glass walls, but everything had changed. When do I start? She asked. Monday, Sebastian said. Today, you go home to your daughter and tell her the good news. Tomorrow, you rest. Monday, we change the world. 3 months later, Diana stood at the window of her new office on the 44th floor, watching the sun set over the city. The view was different from up here. The buildings that had once seemed like mountains now looked like possibilities. The streets that had once trapped her now looked like pathways. Behind her, she heard the door open and small footsteps running across carpet. Mama! Diana turned in time to catch Maya as she launched herself forward. At 9 years old, Maya was getting too big for this, but Diana caught her anyway, lifting her daughter and spinning once before setting her down. How was dance class? Diana asked. Amazing! Maya's face glowed. She wore pink tights and a black leotard, her hair pulled back in a bun that was already coming loose. Miss Jennifer said I might be ready for point shoes next year. Can you believe it? Point shoes! I can absolutely believe it, Diana said, smoothing her daughter's hair. You're incredible. She was. Maya had started ballet classes 2 months ago, the classes she'd been begging for since she was 6, classes they could finally afford, classes that were just the beginning of everything Diana could now give her. The medical bills had been paid in full, $47,000 cleared in a single payment. The apartment, the shabby 1-bedroom in Westbrook, was being packed up this weekend. They were moving to a 2-bedroom in a better neighborhood, a place with heat that worked and windows that closed and no roaches. Diana was making $135,000 a year, a number that still didn't feel real when she saw it on her bank statement. But it wasn't just the money, it was the work. In 3 months, Diana had redesigned Cross Enterprises' entire hiring process. She'd created a lived experience track for candidates without traditional credentials, evaluating them on practical skills and character instead of degrees. She'd implemented bias training for all hiring managers. She'd started a mentorship program, pairing executives with entry-level employees from underserved communities. And she'd hired 15 people. 15 people who'd been dismissed by other companies. 15 people who reminded her of herself 3 months ago. People with gaps in their resumes and stories that didn't fit on applications. People who deserved chances. Mama, is this really your office? Maya asked, looking around with wide eyes. It's so big. It is, Diana confirmed. Do you want to see the view? She led Maya to the window. The city spread out before them, lights beginning to twinkle as evening fell. From up here you could see everything. The financial district, the residential neighborhoods, the parks and bridges and rivers that connected it all. It's beautiful, Maya whispered. It is, Diana agreed. But you know what's even more beautiful? What? Knowing that every single person down there matters, Diana said. The bankers in the tall buildings and the custodians cleaning those buildings, the executives in their cars and the bus drivers getting them home. Everyone has value. Everyone deserves to be seen. Maya looked up at her mother. Is that what Grandma Maria used to say? Diana smiled. She'd been telling Maya stories about her great-grandmother lately. Stories she'd learned from Sebastian. Stories about a woman who'd changed lives by believing in people. Yes, Diana said. That's exactly what she used to say. The door opened again. Sebastian entered, Lily beside him. The 4-year-old girl had become Maya's best friend over the past months. While Diana worked, Maya spent afternoons in the Cross Enterprises Childcare Center, which Sebastian had expanded and improved based on Diana's recommendations. "Diana, do you have a minute?" Sebastian asked. "I wanted to run something by you before the board meeting tomorrow." "Of course." Diana turned to the girls. "Maya, why don't you show Lily your new dance moves? Use the conference room next door." The girls ran off, giggling. Diana turned back to Sebastian. Over the past 3 months, their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated. Not romantic. Something different. Something deeper. They were partners in building something meaningful. They were two people connected by the ghost of a woman who'd believed in second chances. And they were friends. "The board is proposing a new initiative," Sebastian said. "The Maria Santos Foundation. A non-profit dedicated to providing interest-free loans to small business owners who can't get traditional financing. I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with using your grandmother's name." Diana's throat tightened. "A foundation?" "We'd start with $5 million in funding," Sebastian said. "Provide loans from $10,000 to $50,000, mentorship, support, everything your grandmother provided for my father, but on a larger scale." Diana walked back to the window. The city lights blurred through her tears. "She'd love that," Diana whispered. "She'd be so proud." "She'd be proud of you," Sebastian said, coming to stand beside her. "Of what you've built here, of how you've changed this company." Diana shook her head. "I haven't changed anything. I'm just doing what she taught me, seeing people, giving chances, believing in potential." "That's everything," Sebastian said. They stood in silence, watching the city. From the conference room next door, they could hear Maya and Lily laughing. The sound of children who didn't know what it meant to struggle, who were growing up with opportunities their parents had fought for. Diana thought about the morning 3 months ago, walking into this building in worn scrubs, sitting in that conference room feeling less than, walking away believing she'd failed. She thought about Sebastian running through the plaza, breathless and determined. About an old envelope with her grandmother's handwriting, about a debt paid forward across generations. "Thank you," Diana said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me," Diana said. "For running after me. For believing I was worth chasing." Sebastian smiled. "I didn't chase you because I believed in you, though I do. I chased you because your grandmother taught me that the most valuable thing we can do with power is use it to lift others up. You're not the one who should be thanking me. I'm the one who should be thanking you." He gestured to the office, to the company, to everything they'd built together. "You gave me the chance to finally repay a debt I've owed for 37 years. You gave me the opportunity to become the kind of leader Maria Santos believed my father could be. You reminded me why this company exists." Diana looked out at the city one more time. The buildings no longer looked like mountains. They looked like what they were: glass and steel and human ambition. Structures built by people, for people. Nothing more, nothing less. And somewhere down there, in every office building and apartment complex and corner store, were people like her. People like her grandmother. People who deserved to be seen. Tomorrow, she'd get back to work. There were more people to hire, more programs to build, more chances to give. But tonight, she'd take her daughter home to their new apartment. She'd make dinner in a kitchen with appliances that worked. She'd tuck Maya into a bed in her own room. She'd sleep on an actual bed instead of a pull-out couch. And she'd dream about a woman in a simple dress, standing in a modest kitchen, smiling at the camera. A woman who'd believed that faith moved mountains. A woman who'd changed the world $12,000 at a time. "Come on," Diana said to Sebastian. "Let's get our girls and go home." They walked to the conference room together. Through the glass walls, they could see Maya teaching Lily a pirouette, both girls wobbling and laughing. The city spread out behind them, endless and full of possibility. Diana opened the door. "Ready to go, baby girl?" Maya ran to her, and Diana lifted her daughter, holding her close. From 44 floors up, the world looked different. Not bigger or smaller, just clearer, more honest, more real. And Diana Thompson, once invisible in worn scrubs, now stood at the window of her corner office and saw exactly what her grandmother had always seen: a world full of people worth believing in, a world full of mountains that faith could move, a world where everyone deserved to be seen. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.